Okay, that makes sense. Okay, one of the most common, most popular questions is from moms who their kids are like 15, 16 years old, and they say, okay, am I beyond hope? You know, can I fix it? You know, I don't have a baby anymore. But, you know, is there a point where it's too late to fix the diastasis?
In terms of what's going to come back together naturally, I guess you could think of the diastasis in the same way that you might think of any other wound or something that needs healing. And so that sort of those first 8 to 12 weeks postpartum are the time when it's going to come back. It's going to kind of do what it's going to do on its own in that time. Beyond that time, then we need to address it a bit more specifically. We need to look at training and then strengthening those core muscles. There is a difference between training them and strengthening them. It comes back again to, like I said, about this connection. You see, it's why a lot of women get confused in Pilates class, or they're kind of doing loads of ab work but not seeing the results. You can't strengthen something that you haven't trained to work. And after we have babies, we need to retrain our muscles to work. So sort of post that initial postpartum period, and certainly within the first year postpartum, it's done all it's going to do on its own. You've kind of got to work on it after that. But after that, yeah, it doesn't really make much difference after that. It's affected by lots of things. Your age, space between pregnancies, your nutrition is important. As is genetics, you know, so it's all of those things affect our body's ability and speed to heal. But you can always do something. You can always improve it. You may not fix it, but you will always improve it. Okay,
so that's the other biggest question, of course, is how do we fix it? What do we do? What do we not do? I know enough to know that we don't do crunches, but how do we get started training those muscles in the right way?
Okay, well, the first thing to think about is, like I said at the beginning, diastasis is caused by pressure that is pushing out and away inside your abdomen, and it's pushing the wrong way. So before you kind of do any exercises or sort of go through any program or process, that the first stage of that has to be to address the cause of the problem. It's important to remember through this that the diastasis is not the cause of the problem. It's a symptom, if you like. It's what's happened as a result of this pressure. So what we need to do first is address that pressure. And the way we do that is by adjusting the alignment of our bodies, the way we literally hold our bodies, and how pressure is being exerted within that cavity. And so an example of how you would do that, this is about how we sit, how we stand, how we hold ourselves. It's about not tucking your butt under, for instance. You know, that's something that we've all done. So many of us do. And it's something that, you know, exercise class used to always tell us to do, didn't it? It's like, tuck your pelvis, tuck your tailbone. That process of tucking our tailbone underneath, it shortens the pelvic floor muscle, which in the short term tightens, but that's not effective. A short muscle is not a short, tight muscle is not a strong one. And it effectively kind of switches transverse off. It switches transverse abdominis off. So we need to untuck our backsides. We need to stop sucking in. You know, sucking in the belly is something that a lot of women do naturally. They do it to kind of, you know, exactly. We suck it in, and we're almost, you know, culturally trained to do that. We suck it in, and also it's quite commonly thought that is engaging your transverse. That if you suck in your tummy, you're engaging your transverse. You're not. If you suck in your... Well, if you imagine that you're not sucking in your tummy, so it's just hanging free, and then you suck it in, well, it's got to go somewhere, okay? That mass that was sticking out now has to go somewhere. So all you're doing when you suck in is displacing that mass. You're shifting it up, usually, or so you're exerting more pressure down onto the pelvic floor, up into the diaphragm, but you're just moving it. That's not a muscular movement, that's a pressure-related movement. So we need to stop sucking in our tummies. We need to stop tucking our butts under. We need to drop our shoulders and let them go down, okay? All these things, people think, she's telling me how to walk and stand, you know. How is that an ab exercise? But but until we adjust the way our bodies are actually working, then we're kind of, the horse is bolted, you know, we're not going to fix the problem. So a lot of it is about that. It's about adjusting alignment. Get out of high-heeled shoes. They shift everything forward. Throw your alignment out as well. That's a whole barefoot conversation, which is another one. But so there's all of these things that we can do to adjust our alignment. Alignment is not exactly the same as posture. Posture is kind of how we look when we stand or sit. Alignment is more about how we mechanically work, how it actually works. So we need to adjust that. And then we need to initially find and then work our transverse abdominis, our deepest core muscle. And the way you do that is by drawing in that belly button, but not in a kind of sucking in way, okay? So the way you find it is that you, on an exhale, so exhale and draw belly button to spine, but this doesn't move and your pelvis doesn't move. That's really important. Don't tuck under as you do it, okay? A good way to try this is standing side on to a mirror and try and engage transverse without your butt or your pelvis moving. That's the trick.
Okay.
If that stays not moving, so this doesn't move, but pelvis doesn't move, then that's a muscular movement. Anything else and you're just shifting.
Okay, that makes sense. So that seems to be kind of the core, you know, finding the transverse abdominis, learning how to engage it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the exercises seem to kind of come from that, you know, pulling it back, letting it go, pulling it back for a certain amount of time. Are those the kind of exercises that you normally teach?
They are, that finding it process is certainly the first stage. What I don't do in my programs is hundreds of repetitions of anything. It's much more about one, quality rather than quantity, but also it's about what MUTU System and what I do is all about is making moms fit for purpose, making us function, okay? So every day we pull and push and lift and twist, and we have to lunge when we reach for our kids, and we have to do all these movements, and the important thing is to make sure that to train our core to work correctly when we make all of those movements. You okay?
Sorry about that. My blinds, the sun started going right on top of my head.
So it's about, as I say, not hundreds of repetitions for one, but
okay.
Yeah, that finding TVA is very much the first stage. And then we start with some exercises, sort of both standing, sitting, and on your back for some of it. Just learning to engage those muscles, learning to breathe in the thoracic cavity, in the rib cage, not in the belly, not up in the shoulders, and to engage that muscle. And then what we move on to is functional exercises, and by that I mean things like squats, and we work with some exercises on the floor where you're engaging the core in order to move other parts of your body. So it's not just a pull. It's kind of find it and then make it work whilst doing a movement that is useful to us.
Okay, that makes total sense because everything's connected.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to learn how to engage your core to be able to do other things because, you know, I want to be able to run and do circuit training, and I don't want to just be just doing the transverse ab moves all day.
And that's important too. It's that distinction. What we do a lot is we think, right, I must do my ab exercises. So we sit and we concentrate and we do our ab exercises, and then we go and do our other workout, and we completely forget that whole thing that we just were doing. And it's only going to work if you apply those core engagement principles to every squat, to every twist, turn, lift, pull and push. You know, that's when it starts to work.
Okay, and what should we absolutely not do?
Okay, you know, crunches. And a good way to think about what not to do as well is I encourage women to visualize that issue, that gap, if you like, because if you imagine that you've got this muscle and it's still joined at the breastbone and it's still joined at the pubic bone, but it kind of does that in between. If you do that crunching movement, that kind of jackknifing movement, you'd literally just opening the gap. It just open every time. what things like crunches also do. Pilates 100s aren't great too. Anything that puts you in that jackknife kind of straining sort of this position, you know, where your body's doing this. You can tell if you shouldn't be doing an exercise with DR, because if your abdomen bulges at all while you're doing it, then you don't want to be doing it. Okay, and that's a good way too of checking when you're doing any sort of ab exercise. If it's bulging at all, if it's straining and pushing out, you need to stop, gather, and either just stop and do something else, or sort of focus on that engagement again. The way we look when we exercise is what we're exercising to look like. If it's bulging out while you're doing the moves, you're making it bulge out.
Okay, that makes sense. So when, another question is, when will it ever be safe to do those exercises again? Can we get to a certain point? Is there a certain finger width that, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm only one finger or I'm only two fingers, do I still need to work on closing it, or when can I start to do crunches again? And then I've heard other experts say, don't ever do crunches again. So what's the answer to that?
First answer would be you don't need to do crunches to have a flat stomach. Okay, so and I mean that's not just a postpartum thing or a diastasis thing. Most exercise science now very much points towards not needing that kind of jackknifing, crunching movement to get those to get the flat abs that you want. So I wouldn't worry too much anyway about going back to crunches. But people often ask about planks and sort of positions in that prone position, and the answer to that is it's less about a specific measurement, like a finger width or whatever. It's more about the stability that you've got. And so when you're testing, and there's a short video on my website actually that shows how you can test yourself to do it. I'll put the link on here. But the firmness of that midline, the linea alba, the section between the two parts of muscle, the firmness of that area is as important, if not more important, than the gap itself. Okay, so you can have a flat stomach and a small gap. I've got two kids, I've got a small gap, I've got a totally flat tummy that works. The gap is not a problem per se, there's a small gap left. It's about that midline being firm. So that's the thing to test for as well, not to get too hung up. People get very sort of almost obsessed with the finger width thing. If you're looking at sort of 3-4 finger widths plus, then you have instability for sure. And if you have a deep or soft midline with no stability, then you have a problem, and you need to make these adjustments. But if you have a finger width or two that is and it's firm in the midline, and you can try it. That's the best thing I say. Try a plank. Do you feel like you're falling out at the front? If you feel like you're falling out at the front, you are falling out at the front. Don't do it. So a lot of it is about just keep trying. It's not so much about hard and fast rules as much about learning to use that core, engage it, and work it with everything you do. You can do planks when your core is strong again. It's fine.
Okay. And so does your video go over that when you're testing yourself to feel if it's firm or if it's a deep? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it does. It says that you're looking for both the gap, but you're also testing for the firmness of that midline. Yeah.